support system called reunification therapy. And children are taken forcibly out of their homes. Usually it's through like a third party company. They're hired specifically to do this. They are hired to kidnap children. And a lot of times it can be very aggressive, very physical, very obviously incredibly traumatic to begin with. But then they're taken to these, sometimes they're kind of like camps, like summer camps, but it's not really like that. And they're forced to basically have quote unquote therapy with a parent who they have accused of being abusive. Because the idea is by these therapists, who I don't consider to truly be therapists, I think they should have their licenses removed. They might even not have licenses. It's a very suspicious business, but they try to force the child to have a relationship with the abusive parent, and it's a very lucrative business. These like a single trip can be in like the thousands of dollars, so it's very popular, and it's legalized human trafficking.
The Ms. Texas Show is a voice of hope for victims, survivors, advocates, and community leaders against gender-based violence to share their stories and resources. We began showcasing life in Texas. Today we are impacting lives not only in Texas, but also around the world. Under our segment Military Time, we run this segment in partnership with the National Veterans Chamber of Commerce. We invite military and veterans who have overcome traumatic events to share their experiences during and after their military service. Under our beauty segment, we invite fellow pageant winners and contestants, artists, musicians, actors, models, and dancers, and last but not least, our survivor leaders from family violence, sex trafficking, sexual assault, stalking, and other traumatic events, who are ambassadors for these causes to share their lives and the impact they have made. To become a guest on our show, email us at MsUSATexas@gmail.com. If you would like to support victims and survivors of gender-based violence, make a tax-deductible donation to Hope Pyx Global at www.hopepyxglobal.org.
Welcome to the TheMsTexasShow. Show. I'm your co-host, Angelica Bidlack, and today I'll be speaking with Fiona Elizabeth Curley on the topic of the Declaration of Human Rights by the American Youth. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Angelica, and hi, everyone. My name is Fiona. I'm also a co-host of the TheMsTexasShow, Show, but today I'm here to talk about my role in the Youth Declaration, the Declaration of Human Rights by American Youth, on behalf of the United Nations Association of the United States of America. We put together a declaration in honor of the 75th anniversary of the original Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And this one kind of reflects changes in the world. We tried our best to change certain things that need to be for the current times, and also add some new things as well, since we have new issues. I think notably technology is a very new big thing, security within technology. So those were kind of the things that we did, and I focused on in my group. I was in group 4, and my focus was on due process and peace and security.
Amazing. So yeah, you answered the first question, what even the Declaration of Human Rights by the American Youth is. Maybe you'd like to explain why it's so important next for the audience?
Sure. So this is, I think it's a really significant thing, especially since, this one specifically is written by youth, not necessarily for youth, but it's for everyone, but it's written from the perspective of young people. And I think young people today have a very different viewpoint of the world now compared to how it used to be. There's a lot of new activism that's been taking place by young people. I think on a global scale that has never been seen before. So for us to be able to write this, I think it really solidifies kind of like our demands, like what our demands are for how we should be able to live a better life. And I think every single article in this declaration really explains that and really shows how much dedication that young people have to these causes, because there are multiple many things within this declaration. I only did like a small portion, and even that was a lot. But there are so many things in this article, in this declaration, so many articles that cover so many different important ideas, and I think that's probably why this is such a significant thing that was accomplished this year.
Amazing. So how many do you know how many youth were participating in that?
I think it was just about a dozen. I had three co-drafters within my group. It was Isabella Malkovich, Autumn Simmons, and Nicholas Wu. The four of us worked together on just one portion. So I think if there were four groups, there might have been like around 16 of us, but I'm not sure.
Wow, that's amazing. And what portion did you work on?
So I had within my group, it was due process, peace and security, and innovation and technology. But I
Mhm.
was there to focus on mainly due process as well as peace and security. It's why I was really interested in joining to begin with, because I had seen that they had that section available. So.
Yeah. Um, all right, so how do you think this is going to shape our future? I mean, obviously you spoke about how this is talking about how what American youth find important in the aspects of human rights for the future, but how does specifically your section, if that's something you're comfortable talking about, how your section about technology and peace, how that can shape the future?
Yeah, so a lot of in my subject matter, what we focused on had a lot to do with equal protection before the law, and not just equal protection before the law itself, but also basically equal protections as a private citizen. One of the more notable things I think is in both Article 9 and Article 14, we kind of talk about how everyone has the right to live within their home, not to be removed from their home, not to be arbitrarily arrested. And those things I think will be very helpful to have solidified, especially in the cases of human trafficking, not being kidnapped, all of these things. I definitely think from a legal standpoint, one of the reasons why I was here was because that Article 14, that no one should be forced to leave their home. I find that really significant because there is basically a legalized form of human trafficking going on within our court system, specifically within the family court system, called reunification therapy. And children are taken forcibly out of their homes. Usually it's through like a third party company. They're hired specifically to do this. They are hired to kidnap children, and a lot of times it can be very aggressive, very physical, very obviously incredibly traumatic to begin with. But then they're taken to these. Sometimes they're kind of like camps, like summer camps, but it's not really like that. And they're forced to basically have quote unquote therapy with a parent who they have accused of being abusive, because the idea is by these therapists, who I don't consider to truly be therapists. I think they should have their licenses removed. They might even not have licenses. It's a very suspicious business, but they try to force the child to have a relationship with the abusive parent, and it's a very lucrative business. These like a single trip can be in like the thousands of dollars. So it's very popular, and it's legalized human trafficking. So to have such a specific statement of no one should be forced to leave their home due to conflicts or acts of aggression. Those acts of aggression I think is incredibly important, because that specifies that in abuse cases, um, this should not be happening. No one should be being forced to leave their home like that, especially not children. So yeah, I do think that this will have a good effect on our legal system for policymakers and people like that.
Yeah, and this is a very important topic that I don't think has been voiced, and thank you for utilizing what you know about the topic to help hinder it. Um, this is a very sensitive topic, so feel free to say no to my next question, but is there a specific reason you decided to voice that topic for the Declaration of Human Rights by American Youth based on, past experiences or somebody who's been through that?
Yeah, so I am I use the word survivor not just in terms of domestic violence, but also in terms of family court. I like to call myself a family court survivor. My mother and I are both domestic violence and family court survivors because abuse from my father was one thing, but it was exacerbated like 1,000 times by what the court system did.
Mhm.
So especially in the case of due process, which is another thing that we talked about, how every person is to be recognized as an equal person before the law and is entitled without any discrimination to justice and equal protection of the law, and that includes children. And unfortunately, as a minor, and I'm going to be turning 18 at the end of January, but through my
Okay.
experience as a child, I did not have any kind of representation whatsoever. Like I did not even have there are these advocate quote unquote advocates that are called guardian ad litems, and they are supposed to be lawyers for children, but they're more of in a limited role. And the reason why I don't really care to call them advocates is because they don't really work for the child, they work for the judge. And they
Mhm.
do not I have a lot of friends who are also survivors, and like all of them have said that they did have these guardian ad litems. But when they talked to them, even when they were like so specific about abuse and stuff, and they like gave like very clear, like very specific evidence, the lawyer did not care and would just go with whatever the judge wants, because
Mhm.
they say that they're doing these things in the best interest of the child, but they really aren't. They're doing it in the best interest of themselves. Um, so not only did, even though they are not good lawyers, but I didn't even have that. I didn't have a lawyer at all. Because when the time came for me to be assigned someone, my mother agreed to it, but my father did not. So because he didn't agree to it, I just ended up with no one except my mother. And then on top of everything else, my mother had no representation. For the most part, she did have for a good portion, she had a pro bono lawyer, but then he left. So then she not only was representing herself on her own, but she was also representing me. So
Mhm.
to have due process specified was so important to me, and it is why I joined, because I was like, someone needs to be there. There needs to be someone in the room who's saying
Yeah.
like these things are important, that these things are necessary. And so yeah, that's why I joined. So it was important to me.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It's really important for people to hear, especially because this isn't, as said, a topic that we really hear about, although it is very timely and does affect a lot of people. So, again, thank you for voicing that. Lastly, I'd like to ask what exactly were the proportions of what young people played in drafting this declaration and adults? Was this merely only this portion of the declaration written only by youths, or was there negotiation with adults? How did that work?
Yeah, so I to my knowledge, I think the idea itself was originally organized with adult members of UNA USA, as well as I know there are two youth observers to the United Nations on behalf of the United States who worked on this. So I think there was a good mix, even to begin with, of adult allies of youth and youth themselves. But when it came time to writing the declaration, I do think in full it was written entirely by young people. I do remember even after we were assigned a small portion of the articles, everyone got their own section. But even once we had completed that, we had there was a portion of time where we were allowed to review the entire full declaration, and we can make any suggestions that we wanted to, and that includes like even like the byline or like the recommendations and things like that. So I do think it was a very hands-on process for youth, and I think UNA USA did a great job incorporating youth into this, and I really do think this was a very youth inclusive project that was worked on.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Again, this is really important, and I'm glad that you had this opportunity to raise your voice and that other young people had the opportunity to raise their voice. And with that, thank you everyone so much for listening. This is the Miss Texas Show with Angelica Bidlack and
Oh, me, Fiona Elizabeth Curley. Thank you.